Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first are the headlines. Now the news in detail. President Museveni has today officially launched the COVID-19 vaccine trials at Mulago Hospital. Let's have more on this story. Moving on, Mengo Court Chief Magistrate Esther Nansubuga says she will deliver her ruling on the case where NUP's Freddie Nyanzi is challenging Mohamedin Seleko's win in the Kampala Central MP race tomorrow, 28th January at 11 a.m. Let's take a look.
Yes, I think God has a reason why I was not declared winner in this race. I won, but I was not declared. I have now to take that responsibility to make sure that this voting machinery, machination is revealed. So it is our mission to make sure that we deter, we negate, we fight, we put to an end this rigging machinery, the way of rigging elections, because rigging elections has been a resultant factor why the country has not been stable. I thank you.
There is clearly no evidence that tantamounts to call for a recount in this election. We'll leave the rest of the judgment to the Land Honorable Chief Magistrate of this court. But you can clearly see that it's frivolous, malicious, brought out of bad faith. For example, the gentleman called Summit View in Kololo, where I lost. And he says we beat up his agents and scared them away. When they actually, his agents signed, I lost at that polling station to NRM Cedric Babu. Myself, I lost. He also lost. So how does that tantamount to a fault on my side? The same in Nakasero. So he wants to paint a picture that I actually used the army, when actually the army was harassing him. And he was part of the entire game. It's absolutely true. And now he's turning around. Probably they have promised him something that we went and altered for you. And he wants to do what was done in Masaka. Just like what was being done in Masaka. Be conscious of people that bring recounts. They are normally cunning, vexatious, frivolous, and very ungenuine. They are not genuine. So I would like to thank my team of lawyers. Thank you very much. You've clearly shown that everywhere his agents signed, when he says his agents were beaten and scared out, and you know they did not sign. When you check on the declaration form, they signed. And then he said, I was told by my agent. So how did you get the declaration forms? That means they actually delivered to you the declaration form. And that's why my big question comes that when he came to the Tally Center, I actually asked him, where? Okay, this is okay, this is between us. But where are the declaration forms of your brother? He didn't say a word. This is a man just interested in getting a job, not doing a service for his country. Thank you very much.
Yes, we came to the Magistrates Court in Mengo on behalf of Nyanzi Fred Sentamu to apply for an order of recount. Reason being, there are many numerical questions that arise out of some declaration forms in about 53 polling stations in Kampala Central. If you look at the declaration forms, you do an audit and add up everything, you realize that there are 2,557 unaccounted for ballots. And yet the difference with which Mohamedin Seleko won is only 1,023 votes. So if you do a recount in those particular and specific polling stations, you will get a different result from what was declared by the Electoral Commission. So we made our submissions. EC and Mohamedin Seleko objected. Their main objection is that this is an election petition, not a recount application, which means they're admitting, in fact, they're only saying that we committed so many grave practices that it should not be only a recount, but a petition. For us, we are saying no. The grave inconsistencies and illegalities that we have here are enough to order for a recount in those specific ballot papers. So we are getting our ruling tomorrow at 11.
The Council policy.
In our health news today, a 12-meter steel box has been installed at the Johannesburg morgue to help it cope with the rising tide of COVID deaths. The container can store up to 40 dead bodies, keeping them at a constant 0 Celsius. Let's have more on this story.
Marius du Plessis of AVBOB, the spokesperson, said have seen an increase of around 40% in corpses across the country, a leading funeral and burial service provider in the country. South Africa is the continent's worst hit country in the pandemic, with more than 1.4 million coronavirus cases and 40,800 deaths, when they surged to unprecedented levels this month after scientists detected a new virus variant widely believed to be more contagious. To help store an influx of bodies and ensure COVID-19 victims are separated from others, AVBOB has distributed 22 containers normally used for transporting goods to its 250 South African morgues. At a funeral home in administrative capital Pretoria, an undertaker ties a third layer of plastic around a corpse sent that morning from a coronavirus hospital ward. Only the feet, arms, and head can be distinguished from the tightly wrapped bundle lying on a stainless steel table surrounded by white tiled walls.
Still in health, Mauritius on Tuesday began vaccinations against COVID-19. It is a crucial step for the country as it moves to revive its hard-hit tourism sector. We have more.
The first to receive the jab was an on-duty doctor at Victoria Hospital in the central town of Cotobones. About 100 other medical staff are expected to be inoculated on Tuesday. The health minister said the campaign would initially target staff treating patients with COVID-19 and workers meeting passengers at the airport. The first 100,000 doses of the vaccine, the health minister said the campaign would initially target staff treating patients with COVID-19 and workers meeting passengers at the airport. The first 100 doses of the vaccines were donated by India. Mauritius, with a population of 1.3 million, has officially recorded 568 cases and 10 deaths since the start of the pandemic. But the economic cost has been severe for the Indian Ocean archipelago nation, which heavily depends on its tourism sector. On Friday, Health Minister Kailash Jagutpal said that the country plans to vaccinate 60% of its population in 2021 in the hope of kick-starting economic activity and its tourism sector. According to the minister, the vaccination campaign will enable Mauritius to review the conditions of entry of passengers to Mauritius and allow the tourism sector, which was the economic sector most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, to restart. Visitors to Mauritius must undergo a mandatory test for COVID-19 before quarantining for 2 weeks. Foreign Minister Nanduk Maboda said some 200,000 additional doses of vaccine are expected to arrive from India by the end of March. He also said Mauritius had purchased 240,000 doses of vaccine through COVAX program. It is an initiative of the World Health Organization and private partners for the even distribution of vaccines.
Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back.
Human security in general terms should be one of the new goals. and that certainly will include justice. The right to feel secured, right to information, the right to know that they have an identity or national identity. They first need to know their rights, and that in itself may require some education. There are many people who don't know the provisions of their constitutions and the rights that are granted to them. So once you've taught them their rights, then you must be able to respect it when they claim it through the justice system. I think we've turned the corner. I think our many years of reform, economic reform, our many years of democratization has set us on course. There are bound to be pockets, of failures and pockets of instability from time to time. Failure is just the other side of success. Failure can be a stepping stone. You can build upon the lessons of failure. Everybody now watches the indicators, make sure that they redouble their efforts and whatnot. So the sensitization of the achievement of those goals are now there almost in every country. And so that will make it easier for the new development goals to be achieved, and to be achieved perhaps at a much faster pace.
Affectionately known as Liberia's Iron Lady, 72-year-old Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became Africa's first elected female head of state in 2005 following a presidential runoff. Born in Liberian capital Monrovia in 1938, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf studied economics and accounts at the College of West Africa until 1955. When she married James Sirleaf at the age of 17, she later divorced him after the relationship turned violent, and has since become a champion for gender equality and women's rights. In the 1950s, she traveled with her husband to the United States to continue her studies at the universities of Wisconsin, Madison, and Colorado. Boulder, Sirleaf later studied economics and public policy at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government, gaining a Master of Public Administration. In 1972, she returned to her native Liberia to work under the government of William Tolbert, where she served as Assistant Minister of Finance and later Minister of Finance. Following Samuel Doe's military coup in 1980, Sirleaf was briefly imprisoned and later fled Liberia, publicly criticizing the regime. She was involved in the 1985 Liberian election, and in 1992 was appointed Director of the United Nations Development Programme's Regional Bureau for Africa, from which she resigned in 1997 to run for president in Liberia. Coming a distant second to Charles Taylor, Sirleaf stood again for president as the candidate of the United Party in 2005. When she was placed second in the first round for voting behind footballer George Weah, but won 59% of the vote in the subsequent runoff elections, making her the first elected female head of state in Africa. In January 2010, she announced that she would run for a second term in the 2011 presidential elections, scheduled for October 11th. One veteran of Liberia's political scene said Sirleaf's nickname comes from her iron will and determination. She has been awarded the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize for her non-violent struggles for the safety of women and for women's right to fully participate in peace building.
Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News with the right to know. In business news today, Kenya has joined Uganda and Tanzania in taxing digital services to support its depleted public coffers in an economy weighed down by slowing private sector activities, shrinking revenue collections, growing public debt, and increasing expenditure pressures. Let's have more.
The digital service tax, which took effect on January 1st, was introduced by Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Uka Yatani, through the Finance Act 2020. With the budget statement for the 2020-2021 financial year, the first advancement in technology, many business transactions are increasingly being carried out through digital platforms. In some cases, due to the nature of the transactions, it is difficult to effectively tax the income derived through such platforms. It is therefore necessary to provide a framework that will facilitate taxation of such income, proposing the introduction of the digital service tax on the value of transactions at a rate of 1.5%. The new tax has imposed a 1.5% tax on gross income derived from all service offered through the digital marketplace, including downloadable content such as mobile apps, ebooks, and films, and over-the-top service that will include streaming television shows, films, music, podcasts, and any other digital content. In Uganda, digital service tax was introduced in May 2018 to prevent gossip and broaden the country's tax base. From July 2018, internet users in Uganda seeking to access certain social media sites are required to pay the daily duty of 200 shillings. According to Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter were affected by the tax, forcing the country to lose nearly 30% of internet users between March and September 2018. Some internet users resorted to using virtual protocol networks and Wi-Fi to avoid the over-the-top tax payment. According to Future Challenges EV, collection of the social media tax in Uganda hit a shortfall of 234 billion in the 2018-2019 fiscal year. In Tanzania, to curb hate speech and fake news, the government introduced the Electronic and Postal Communications Regulations 2018 for bloggers, online radio and television, requiring them to pay an annual fee of $900.
In our international news today, Tanzanian President John Pombe Magufuli on Monday pardoned and ordered the release of 1,789 Ethiopian illegal migrants. Their release was prompted following an official diplomatic meeting on Monday between Magufuli and Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde. Let's have more.
Ethiopians have continued to move in thousands to many other countries in the world in search of jobs and political asylum. Many of them have used the Tanzania route to reach South Africa despite the dangers of getting arrested by authorities in their respective countries. Organizations like EU Emergency Trust Fund for Africa have helped secure the release of Ethiopian migrants and even gone ahead to secure them employment. In early 2020, 13 Ethiopians were arrested by Kenyan authorities for illegal entry across the border. Previously, another 22 Ethiopian nationals were arrested in Kenya while being smuggled through Nairobi. Kenyan police later confirmed that 2 other human smugglers were arrested as they were transporting a dozen of Ethiopians to Tanzania. The vastness of the region between Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda has attributed to the influx of Ethiopian illegal immigrants to other regions. Refugee rights organizations and aid agencies have blamed extreme poverty in Africa for raising a number of illegal immigration.
Still in international news, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari replaced the heads of the armed forces on Tuesday as pressure builds over his response to the security situation. He gave no reason for the resignation of the Army, Navy, and Air Force commanders who he appointed in 2016. Let's have more on this story.
Governors and the National Assembly had called on Buhari to replace the military chiefs as they said they were underperforming. Buhari, a former army general, was elected on a pledge to end insurgency in the northeast of the country, where the Islamist group Boko Haram operates. While in the northwest, kidnappers are active. In December, some 300 schoolboys were kidnapped and later returned to their home. Authorities said local bandits were responsible. In central regions, clashes between farmers and cattle herders have worsened. The Boko Haram insurgency has long plagued the country and put pressure on the government as security issues mount. Large parts of the country are out of government control, and an offshoot of Boko Haram, the Islamic State in West Africa Province Group, has become even deadlier in the northeast. Since 2009, at least 36,000 people have been killed in armed conflicts and millions have been displaced. The voice has spread to neighboring Niger, Chad, and Cameroon.
Moving on, Donald Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani exploited false election fraud claims to hawk gold coins, figures, and supplements on a podcast, according to a $1.3 billion defamation suit by a voting machine company. Let's have more.
Dominion Voting Systems Inc.'s lawsuit, filed Monday in federal court in Washington, may now force Giuliani to defend his actions in spreading what the company says are bogus claims that he helped flip millions of votes to President Joe Biden and cost Trump a second term in office. He and his allies manufactured and disseminated the big lie, which forcibly went viral and deceived millions of people into believing that Dominion had stolen their votes and fixed the election. The company alleged in its complaint. Giuliani didn't immediately return a message seeking comment. Dominion previously sued former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell for defamation after she led the charge against the company by claiming foreign enemies had infiltrated its voting software as part of a vast conspiracy. She hasn't yet responded to the allegation. The suit against Giuliani, who sought to charge the Trump campaign $20,000 a day for legal work on election-related lawsuits, comes after the bogus conspiracy helped inspire a deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on Jan 6th, following a rally at which Trump and Giuliani spoke.
Let's once again take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, the right to know. Now in our sports news today, a journey that started with high hopes ended miserably with Uganda Cranes losing 5-2 on Tuesday night to defending champions Morocco at the Toto Chan 2020 finals in Cameroon. The biggest chunk of the Ugandan team was making its debut appearance at the tournament set aside for the local best players on the African continent. This was one of the contributors to the results, but did not stop the players, technical team and FUFA to set targets for the tournament. Our reporter has more on this story.
سريعا مشاهدينا الكرام ننضم الى الاستاد ريونيفيكاسيون ملعب رضا الجعدي 11 جهه اليسرى مع المساوي والتسديده بعيده يا ادم يا نفاتي انا اتفق معك يا ادم يا نفاتي بعض الاحيان سلاح التسديد من خارج المنطقه تسجيل هدف غلطه دفاعيه غلطه في التغطيه اول هدف يسجل في مرمى المنتخب المغربي مشاهدينا الكرام يلي عمر نمساوي تفسح له المجال بينما نسيه ممتاز وهذه كره مغربيه العرضيه جول الليله ليلتك يا رحيمي اليوم يومك يا رحيمي الصعب على حارسي المرمى انس الزيتي يلي هذا حافظي مر حافظي ينسل حافظي والخامس
That was the news. Thank you for always tuning in to TV Africa. Please stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.